Good morning and good evening everywhere, wherever you are around the globe. My name is Miklina Kenyi, and I will be your moderator today. This discussion has been sponsored by the United States Agency for International Development, Usaid. Welcome to this important discussion where we'll be discussing about the Revitalized Peace Agreement while looking at the role of South Sudanese women in peace building. Thank you all for joining us. Peace building is a process which brings a conflict to an end and not only encourages a culture of peace, but also brings equal opportunities for all and encourages gender equalities and eliminates all sorts of violence against women. Peace building is the fourth pillar of the United Nations approach to peace and security. The first three being preventative, diplomacy, peacemaking, and peacekeeping, excuse me. Peace building must include every member of communities and their grassroots organizations. It involves a process of healing from the past trauma, reconciliation of communities, and empowerment. Peace building is an ongoing process, and its success depends on how well the underlying causes of the conflict are tackled and solved. It is not about not talking and solving the problem, because such methods will lead to the failure of the peace building and give more room for renewed conflicts. Peace building requires good communication, collaboration, and cooperation, and the involvement and participation of all the people affected. The South Sudan Revitalized Peace Agreement, signed in Addis Ababa in September 2018, allotted 35% for women representation at all levels of the government through affirmative action. South Sudan's Revitalized Agreement on the resolution of the conflict in Republic of South Sudan also contains gender positive provision, such as the 35% quota for the executive and transnational justice mechanism, as well as the proviso that one of the vice presidents must be a female. The affirmative action policy primarily aims to institutionalize the political economy and social rights of women by creating an appropriate structure in the government office and institution so that the public policy and intervention are gender sensitive and ensures equitable development for all South Sudanese men and women. There is need for leadership to reaffirm its commitment to women's empowerment by building on the 35% quota provided by the Revitalized Peace Agreement. On August 26, 2019, a peace agreement was signed by the government of South Sudan, the Republic of South Sudan, and the opposition parties. And this paved the way for an opportunity for peace building. The Revitalized Peace Agreement was recently renewed for another 2 years. Before we start our discussion this morning, I would like to briefly introduce our great panelists. And today we have with us Honorable Betty Achan Ogaro. Honorable Betty is a prominent women's rights activist and a trained mediator and negotiator. She is a motivated member of parliament with a record of accomplishment of driving change. She is a development specialist with depth knowledge of evidence-based strategic planning and institutionalized analysis of government initiatives with 30 years in rural development and sustainable development. Honorable Aguaro is also a microbiologist and a researcher. She has held many positions in the government of South Sudan, including the Minister of Animal Resources and Veterinary Services, among others. She is the founder of the South Sudan Women Caucus and a co-founding member of South Sudanese Women Leaders for Peace. She holds many other duties and responsibilities in international and national forums and institutions. Welcome, Honorable Betty. We have with us today too Dr. Jane Kani Edward. Dr. Jane was born and raised in South Sudan and educated in the then Sudan, Egypt, and Canada. She receives her PhD in sociology of education, from the University of Toronto in 2004. She is currently an associate clinical professor and director of African American Studies at Fordham University in New York. She teaches courses on women in Africa, African history, power and leadership in Africa, and African immigration to the United States, immigrant to the United States, She has carried out research work among South Sudanese refugees and internally displaced people in Egypt, Uganda, and South Sudan. She is the author of Journal of Sudanese Women Refugees, Transformations, and Future Imaginings, and has authored several book chapters and opinion articles. And we'll have shortly also with us Honorable Jihan Deng. Honorable Jihan is a mentor, motivational speaker, and public relations consultant, a former policymaker and diplomat. She is currently completing a master's certificate in organization leadership and business at Regent University. She is a graduate of biochemistry from India, one of the Indians university. She is the chair of the board of Junubna Foundation. She is also a board member of South Sudan Women Empowerment Network. Welcome, Honorable Jihan. We have with us in the house Mr. Edmund Yakani. Mr. Edmund is the Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress Organization. He is a graduate of law. He is a well-known human rights and peace activist. And because of his activism, he was a recipient of Civil Rights Defender of the 2017. In addition to other awards, he is a frontliner in promoting women's meaningful participation in public life. We'll also have with us in the House Honorable Sabina Dario Nyangamoy. Honorable Sabina is a graduate of Ahfad University, College of Psychology and Preschool Education. She also holds a master's degree in project planning and management from the University of Bradford in the UK. She was a member of parliament at the State Legislative Assembly in Torit from 2005 to 10 and has held the position of House Speaker at the State Legislative Assembly from 2007 to 2010. And then from 2011 to 16, she served as a member of parliament at the National Legislative Assembly in Juba and served as a national deputy minister for humanitarian affairs and disaster management. I still have with us other members who are not here with in our discussion today, but I will acknowledge them when they joined. Before we go ahead, I would like to start our first question by asking Honorable Betty. Honorable Betty, what does peace building mean to women? What distinctive contributions do you think women can make towards peace building and post-conflict resolution or construction of South Sudan? You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Maclina, and thank you, viewers. I don't know if you can hear me clearly because I have problems hearing you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes. You can go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you very much for your question. What does peace building mean to women in South Sudan? Honestly, peace building is not a one-off activity. Peace building is a very long process. It involves strengthening the capacity of individuals, particularly women, or communities, even governments. Government may not have the capacity really for peace building. Multilateral and international organizations to manage and resolve conflicts in non-violent ways. Peace building is accomplished using a combination of approaches. And the best way is really to make the local community get involved, particularly women, because they are the people who know what is going on and feel the pain. So for women, peace building would mean promoting consensus and sufficient inclusion as a key strategy. And also for advancing broader issues of social justice, not just silencing the guns, that would not mean peace, but it has to be a broader social justice beyond negotiation table, and then going also beyond the quota. So we cannot just say 35% of women involved in peace negotiation, that would mean peace building. It should go beyond that. And then we need to translate this into the capacities that is available and the expertise into local the political participation. Currently, a lot of women have a lot of untapped and it is not being used. So if we really want to have peace building, and for women, it means involvement of everybody from the grassroots up to the national level. What distinctive contributions do you think women can contribute toward peace building? There are so many things that women bring onto the table and in peace building. The first and foremost thing is, it is obvious that women must be part and parcel of peace building because they are the majority of the population. So you cannot leave the majority and you think you build peace for the majority. Local women have a very distinctive role to play in implementing peace agreements, especially the RRCs. They have updated information and profound insights about what is happening in their local areas. They also have informal networks and contacts among them in the community, which the government will not have. And this will really help to build peace at the grassroots. At the moment, we can see that there are a lot of atrocities at the grassroots level. So if you involve the women with their local networks, they will be able to influence what is going on and begin to build peace among the people. They also have relationship with the traditional and community leaders and tribal leaders. Besides the war going on, most of them are either their children, the youth, or their husbands. So if you involve women, the women will bring onto the table to bring us into these men who are fighting that we need to solve problems non-violently, because violent solving problem has never ever solved any problem in the world, leave alone in Sudan. Moreover, the test of value of peace agreement is in the implementation. So if women are involved in peace building, they bring onto the table non-violent thematic issues and geographical focus. They will discuss things that not only affect women, but affect the nation. And if we can remember, during the RRCs, women went to the negotiation first as intruders, they were told, but then they negotiated their ways as observers, but then finally they negotiated their ways to sit on the table. When the women sat on the table, they took along the points that they had developed outside the negotiation table. So the 9-point agendas women went with to the negotiation table was in the end also adopted and negotiated upon. For example, the women had requested the 25% to remain on the constitution and in the agreement. And when they were at the negotiation table, they now used the president's announcement of 35%. And together, all the women, whether they were from what opposition or from where, together they spoke one language. And that brought the 35%. They also insisted that there must be ceasefire. They really talked to the partners that for us to realize peace or even to implement the peace agenda, there must be ceasefire all over. So the women to convince the partners to discuss the ceasefire, and which was agreed, although they did it in a both formal and informal ways, but it worked. They also requested that the peace agreement must really emphasize on social services like education, public transport, and all other things, which are not directly related to just stopping the guns. So women play very crucial roles, and they play very direct roles. I remember when at the national dialogue, when the Baragazal conference was being held, one particular woman brought up an issue which was, I thought to me, was very important if the government could adopt. She said, now that guns are in the hands of everybody, especially the youth, and without discretion, let the government change the guns they use in South Sudan, so that when the bullets in the hands of the youth get finished, they don't have any other source, because the government would have changed the type of guns they use in Sudan. And I thought this was a practical solution that women can bring onto the table.
It is.
So as I say, peace building is
Go ahead,
peace
sorry.
building is a continuous process. Yes. Yeah, I said, as I sum up this particular question you have asked, peace building is a continuous process. It must include women, and women play very critical and pivotal roles in building peace from the bottom up to the top. And all parties must come together, not just in the capital, but also at the local level, where communities, particularly women, are confronted with a host of critical issues that are left unaddressed during the negotiation table. And then inclusivity is most important. That is why women would be really crucial into this, not only to include women, but include youth, include parties, include anybody. Inclusivity is important in peace building. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. You know, women are the backbone of each community and society. So in every step we do in South Sudan, women should be part of it and all the time. Our next question goes to Dr. Jane Kane. Dr. Jane, is it relevant to discuss the revitalized peace agreement while the transitional period is ending in February 2023? If so, what are the steps that need to be taken to guarantee the effective participation of women in peace building? The floor is yours.
Can you hear me now? I was muted earlier.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to be in this program. Before I answer my question, I just want to make correction on my introduction. I sent a revised bio of mine, so my title has changed actually from clinical to associate professor and chair of the Department of African and African American Studies. So that's one correction that I just want to make. So so to the question of whether we need to discuss the revitalized peace agreement now, and if so, what are some of the steps that should be taken? And I know that people in South Sudan and even South Sudanese in outside South Sudan, actually, they have their own views about the revitalized peace agreement. For me, actually, in my opinion, and given the fact that the peace agreement actually didn't bring any good results for many South Sudanese people, and since it's ending, actually, we need to move beyond talking about the peace agreement. And the main reason is, as I said, is that the agreement actually failed to achieve its objectives. There's some noise. If you can put uh, yourself on mute, that would be much better.
Actually, Dr. Jane, our host, your mic is reflecting voice of the speaker. So can you mute yourself? Put your mic mute so that the voice of the speaker not repeat itself in your phone, in your computer.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's better. So, in my opinion, actually, we should not talk about the peace agreement at the moment because of the following. First of all, the agreement failed to achieve its objective or fulfill its mandate, as the parties to the agreement actually failed to implement most of the provisions of the agreement. In other words, the peace agreement actually didn't guarantee the effective participation of women in peace building. And that's my understanding, that actually the peace agreement actually we should not talk about the peace agreement at the moment. Secondly, I know that the peace agreement is extended, or the transitional period is extended for another 24 months or 2 years. Then the question is, what is the parties going to do in these 2 years if they fail actually to implement the peace agreement in the last 3 years? Not only 3 years, in the last maybe 5 years, because this agreement was signed in 2015 and then revitalized in 2018. So what are they going to do different within the 2 years that they gave themselves? So my point is, the revitalized peace agreement is not about the people and their aspirations, although many people tend to emphasize that the peace agreement is for the people of South Sudan. But it's not, because it's not inclusive. This agreement is not the agreement of all people of South Sudan. Rather, it was an agreement between different parties, and in particular the SPLM factions of the of South Sudan. And it's a power sharing agreement whereby the emphasis actually during the transitional period was on the distribution of positions, government positions, and also it didn't benefit the South Sudanese people. And that's why so many people are dying today. So the agreement, if we look at the period since the signing of the agreement in 2018 up to now, the agreement actually brought a lot of suffering to many South Sudanese people. There's a lot of killing, and I think Brother Edmund just mentioned about the killing of somebody in Ye, an officer in Ye. So you can see how many people were killed during this period since 2000, leave alone the killings that happened previously. But from 2018 to today, how many people are killed? There's rampant insecurity in many parts of South Sudan. There's a lot of gender-based violence and abuses directed against women in different parts of South Sudan. There's a lot of destruction of property. There's a creation of a lot of refugees. Many of our people actually are living in refugee camps in the neighboring countries of Uganda, Kenya, Sudan, and others. So you can see like the agreement actually didn't bring the peace that was intended to bring. And also, if we look at the way in which the parties that signed the agreement actually using the agreement, they're using it actually to continue the war, because there's so many conflicts now going on in South Sudan, and also to maintain their power in government. And that actually becomes a major problem for me as a person who is concerned about the suffering of the people. We need to think about that. So, and that's my answer to this question, whether we need to talk about the agreement now or not. In my opinion, I think we need to move beyond the peace agreement. And this takes me to my second part of the question, which is the steps that are needed to guarantee the effective participation of women in peace building. And I think our previous speaker actually spoke well about what peace building means to women. So in this, so what should be done? My answer to that is people should move beyond the revitalized agreement to chart a new. There's some noise actually going on.
There's noise in the background. Can you all mute, except for the speaker? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Jane.
Okay. So you can also mute yourself. Yeah, so for the second part of the question, I can say that people should move beyond the revitalized peace agreement to chart a new path for South Sudan. And also to guarantee the effective participation of women in peace building, women themselves need to move beyond the peace agreement and explore other ways of how to achieve genuine peace, a peace that respects women's rights and dignity, and also to ensure that that South Sudan will not revert to conflict and instability again, because that's very important. And actually, is some people might think that this is not doable, but in my perspective, it's doable. Moving beyond the peace agreement is doable, actually. And some women have started doing that, particularly some of the women's groups, whether outside South Sudan or in some parts of the neighboring country, even inside Sudan, they started doing that. And they started first by rejecting the extension of the transitional period that was announced last week. And they called for a new social contract for South Sudan. So the advocates should continue using different avenues to get the word out, like either through press statements, like so many people are doing now, or through social media. So we need to move beyond the peace agreement and chart new ways. Also, it's true that the civic space within South Sudan is very restricted. Like people are not allowed even to go out and demonstrate. And it was clear in the sense that when some few people actually went out.
Excuse me. Your earphone is moving, and then it's the one I think generating the noise.
Okay, let me take it out. This is okay, right? Okay, yeah. So I know that the civic space in South Sudan is very restrictive in the sense that you can't come out actually to demonstrate against anything. Even if you're hungry and you want to demonstrate against hunger and the worsening economic conditions, you are always either arrested, or even the deputy governor, the deputy mayor of Juba actually came out openly after the demonstration in Konyo market that, okay, they don't have water cannons to spray the demonstrators. They don't have gumbulashata, according to him, to disperse the demonstrators. They only have live bullets. So that means they're actually ready to shoot anybody who comes out. But still, people should not give up, because we have seen our neighbor, Sudan. Sudan has been under the control of al-Bashir for almost 30 years. But still people were able to come out actually and demonstrate against the injustices that was taking place in Sudan. So I'm sure if people can put their act together, in particular women can put their act together to come out to resist what's going on in South Sudan, where people are subjected to a very difficult situation, they'll be able to do that because nothing is impossible in this world. So to conclude, the bottom line is this peace agreement actually brought suffering to our people in South Sudan and also to our people who are in the diaspora, who are always following the news coming out from South Sudan. All of us who are living outside here, we have family members, we have relatives, we have friends who are living in that kind of situation. So it didn't bring any peace. Instead, it brought destruction and suffering to many people. Many of our people who are supposed to be in their villages cultivating and producing their own food are reduced to internally displaced people, reduced to refugees, reduced to destitution, that they are not able to take care of themselves because of the situation imposed on them. So the bottom line is we have to move away from the Revitalized Peace Agreement, which is ending in February 2023, and the fact that this agreement is ending, not only ending the leadership of Salva Kiir and Riek Machar and the other vice presidents, is ending everybody's role in that government, because it ends the National Assembly, it ends the government in the states and all the institutions connected to this agreement. So my suggestion is that those of us who are concerned about the suffering and the situation in South Sudan, we need actually to rise up and come up with new ways of how to address the problem in South Sudan, ways that are inclusive, that doesn't exclude anybody, ways that are peaceful, that can bring at least peace and stability to the people who have been suffering since the last century. They have been suffering actually. They tried in 1955, even that was during the British colonial rule, and they fought for 17 years, and then they had a relative peace for 10 years, and then after that another war broke out, and they were struggling for their own independence, and at the end they were able to gain their independence through their votes. And then just 2 years into their independence, war also broke out. So we cannot continue with the same situation and expect new results. We need to look at other ways of how to bring peace and stability in South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the elaboration of this. I will now ask our brother, Mr. Edmund, what's your take on this? I'll repeat the question again. Is it relevant to discuss the Revitalized Peace Agreement while the transitional period is ending in February 2023? If so, what are the steps that need to be taken to guarantee the effective participation of women in peace building? Women and even youth as well. You are welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying my take will be somehow also annoying some members in this platform, but that's the beauty of freedom of expression if we try to observe the principle of freedom of expression. So I'm speaking in Juba. I'm a signatory to the Revitalized Peace Agreement on behalf of the stakeholders. I've been closely following up the parties that signed the agreement on how to implement the Revitalized Agreement. Facts were set up with the speakers before me, by the speakers before me. I heard from Dr. Jane, you have heard from Honorable Betty Ogwaro. My take is the options we have at hand is what I'd like to share first. And then from the options that we have at hand, I'll come to the question, because it's always good to provide an answer with a rationale of an understanding. First, I'd like to say one of the information I'd like to provide, or facts I want to set on the ground to inform the rationale of my argument, is that since our independence from 2011, the political establishment in South Sudan is established under the political concept of revolutionaries engaging in setting up political establishments. And I think that is a factor that we need to investigate, and specifically with Dr. Jane, as an academia, that we need to investigate, because the political mindset where we're coming from is we're coming from the background of concepts of revolutionaries. And normal revolutionaries believe that they have conquered the country and the citizens. And these, all our political elites, you can name them, the doctors, the what, you don't see them being stable in one party. They keep on shifting from one party to another, simply because revolutionaries love control of power, and revolutionaries like the political culture where the center of authority should not be questioned until they leave power. And is a scientific proof evidence in our continent of Africa, what do you call the independent caste that many people use to express to. So I think that's something that we need to investigate as scholars, so that we can draw really a complete understanding whether the current political elites, we can deal with them easily, or we need to deal with them in an innovative and creative manner. Because that, for me, is the biggest problem. That the current political establishment, I don't think most of them are established under a sound political culture where the respect of democratic transformation of a society from a situation that they are in and they want to move to a better situation. That rationale is very important, so that we know. I don't think that any of the political elites that now we have before them can really enter into an argument that he is not coming from a background of revolutionists, because revolutionists, for them, they believe they are the only one, they are the heroes. So until the time that they're defined as the heroes come to an end, and the only thing that comes to an end is until when they die and they're in a grave. And you can see Robert Mugabe, you can see Museveni right now, close to us here, forget about others. So that's one thing I would say, so that I can provide my answer. The second thing, that we have three options at hand right now politically for transition to the situation. One option is, and which later on I will share with many of your audience, who specifically, I was engaged with these political parties over the roadmap for almost 1 year. We've been discussing it. It was been hard recently. One option we have at hand is go to elections by December 2022, which is right now maybe 4 months for us to go for elections. But now, if we want to go for election, that's what we call an electoral calendar. All the tasks of an electoral calendar up to now are zero. So in another way around, what we call electoral infrastructure that is required for us to have a peaceful and credible election is not in place. It's completely zero. No legislations, no legal framework. If there's any dispute, so you can apply the legal framework. There's no legal framework which will tell you how the electoral process will look like. There's no legal framework that will tell you how civic education, how electoral process is going to happen. There's no institutional setups for electoral processes, like political party council to register the parties, election commission to make sure they take responsibility. And don't forget about other factors. Other factors are like what? Other secondary laws like the National Security Bill. And still, until yesterday, it is where President Salva and First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar are discussing the content of the national security law in terms of powers and practice. So this is yesterday, and we're left with 4 months to go for elections. And don't forget about our police act in terms of electoral process. What can they play? And the insecurity that we have in our communities. Almost 60% of our country have fallen into what we call community defense forces. And you can see almost every day we're reporting 10 to 20 people who have died. And the security sector, the security and defense sector per today is not a unified. So we're planning by the end of this month to unify the security and defense sector. These are all factors that informs the option of going for elections by December. It's not practical, and it will be a recipe for return to violence. That's one thing I'd like to provide. Second option is an option of toppling the government. It's an option to topple the government. We go to the streets, or we call technocratic government. And I've been engaging for the last 6 months. The word technocratic government even becoming more criminalized, worse than corruption, worse than human rights violation. So when you talk of technocratic government, politicians look at you like you have committed a crime of highest order, worse than corruption, worse than whatever type of crime that we're going to discuss. And we've been pulling rope with some of them in face-to-face discussion over that. Going to the street, having revolutionaries in power, there's a genuine concern here. We must face the street, and if we face the street in the Sri Lanka way, we must lose lives. Whether we my internet bit disturbing. So whether we go the Sudan way, we must lose life. Whether we go the Iraq way, we must lose life. And normally, when you talk of popular uprising, or you talk of demonstration or procession going to the streets, you need champions and architects and designers that are ready to commit themselves for that cost. Not a cost where you call for it and you're the first to run out and you leave innocent citizens of other people to be forward. So that's why I was calling that, okay, let's try, because we tried it, but let's go to the streets. Of course, you need leads for those processes. Some people have to be in the forefront and they should be dedicating their lives for that. Any cost must have its expenses. As like what Dr. Jane was saying, that the deputy mayor have said, no water, nothing, no rubber bullets, it's live bullets. So it means live bullet, the first carriers of the placards of regime change should be ready to receive a live bullet on their chest and forget about life. And the rest will invest on the soldier that they lost to go for that. Are we ready for that? Obviously, most of us are still, that's a bit, that's a careful. So you call for it, but when you come hard, you run. And now the question is, who is ready to stand in the front line and to take lead of that? Because the one of Konyokonya was there, by the way. The one of Konyokonya, I was there, and we see how all the security and defense sector responded. Even this female journalist, which they say they have arrested her during the Konyokonya protest. No, she was picked after the protest. And that's why I'm somebody who dispute the narrative that the female journalist was picked when she was covering them. No, she was followed simply because she contained a material that is going to inform the world what has happened. And that's why she was followed. So she was kidnapped actually. She's not arrested. She's been kidnapped. And that's why some of us are still calling for her release. And I don't believe it because we are there and I was there. I was watching. I was seeing what's happening. That's one thing I like to bring. So this option, you applying it now, it requires proper planning, it requires proper designing, proper dedication, proper putting, like the Sudan way, if like what Jane was using. And only if you see, in all studies of popular uprising, there must be a designers that are statistic with the population, because this population can easily also be diverted and they can be infiltrated. So you need a designers that are close to them. But obviously, this option, we should not underrate it and we should not say it's very far. For me, the option that citizens are going to come to the street is closer, and indicators are showing already citizens have started. As we speak with you now, yesterday in Jongole, civil servant protest and they've been detained. And it's not only Jongole, it's going to rotate all over the country. So it should be a question of how do we go about with it in the best way, in a way that we don't lose lives of our civilians if we go for it. And remember, with the bag of the mayor, that's the second option. So this option is working. The only sound option now we have at hand is the option of, can we think about extending the lifespan of the Revitalized Peace Agreement, because it's ending by December. But what type of extension? Blanket extension, or an extension where check and balance cannot be provided, an extension where there'll be no civic space, an extension of where, like what Jane have done for the last 3 or 5 years, what have they done? What miracle are they going to do within the extended period to convince us that they are ready to transform the country from violence to peace? That becomes the debate around the extension. And so that I can come, because I was engaged the extension to share with the audience the process of the extension. Even I will tell you, I'm aware that even some politicians that belong to these parties that are signatory to the agreement are not aware of the roadmap process. Why? The roadmap process was made as a complete confidential and secret process. People are like us, we penetrate the spirit, like what Jane have said, is that let's keep on knocking. Let's keep on knocking, let's keep on trying. Whoever lost lives. So some people like us, we dedicate ourselves to follow the parties. Some of the discussion, we don't have them in a formal government office space. You have them either in a tea place or in a bar under the influence of beer. They start revealing to you the truth, what is happening. But if you ask them formally, they cannot tell you formally, because it's been sanctioned by the principals. That means the members of the presidents have sanctioned that this roadmap should be locked and should be closed. And that's why it was locked and closed. Nobody can disclose it. So the first thing what happened is that the SPLM IG came with a proposal, and later on we pushed the IO to a corner. Oh, now you're moving in secretly. We see a proposal the president was taken to the president by the security advisor of the president, and then IO jump up. No, we're not part of it. You say, okay, that's an opportunity now, since you're not part of it. So based on that, we start pushing until President Salva and Riek met, and then they start saying, okay, now have to be open for all political parties. So now they start establishing a technical political party committee that brought all the political parties into this process. So the political parties start revising the roadmap. So just to cut short the story, not to be long, the roadmap having 3 options. One option, let's go for election by December, and that's the option which is very terrible. Option of IO, 3 years. Option of IG beyond 3 years. And then, of course, other political parties have to dance tune between this. And what we decided as a civil society, we rush quickly to the citizens out there, and we do a quick random sampling of public opinion polling. And the citizens say, if what's come to us, an extension, they don't want to see more than 1.5 years, which is 18 months. And we start publishing this. So the process was closed. We start beating drums, we start lobbying Troika, we start asking Troika country, UN to really come and help us in opening the space for the consultation on the roadmap. Unfortunately, Troika delayed also. Troika delayed the statement they're supposed to release like 5 days before time. They delayed until when we put our own pressure with our own bargaining way. Then we are called, actually we are called a day before the disclosure of the roadmap. And we're not called for any consultation. We are called for a quick rubber stamping process. So I call like come and rubber stamp it and then just so that we can say stakeholders were consulted. So I remember we were 7 in number. And 7, I was there, Enoch Tombe was there, Professor Moses Macharo was there. 3 of us were resisted. We say we're not here for rubber stamp, but we need to undergo certain conditions that we need to confirm to us. The first thing we ask them, those of you who are sitting here in the room, do you represent all the political parties? They say yes. Then we ask, how do you confirm? Martin Abocha stood up with 2 members as IO, and then Honorable Josephine Lagu with the Minister of Higher Education, Sanction Chang, as a SOA, which is legitimate body. And then you have the IG, you have the, that's Makwei, and then OPP in the IG, that's Lomuru, and the Deputy Minister of Justice. And then the FDs, Dr. Majak Agor was there. So at least we confirm, and then Peter Mayen delegates were there. We confirmed that there. Then we asked them, the document you're going to present to us, have you reached consensus? They say yes. And I'd like to tell you, when we are negotiating behind the curtains, and Dr. Jane, you know, advocates and lobby, sometimes some of these things can't come to the public scene. It has to be behind the public scene. Behind the public scene, we pursued them. We pursued them for 18 months. We really pursued them for 18 months. So that's why it reduced from the option of 30 months or 36 months, we dropped down to 24 months. And that's why we are worried that if we don't run quickly and disclose that, the political parties were aware of them, they can amend. So that's why I went out and we disclosed that, you know, in the consultations, we have reached consensus for 24 months, which later on, of course, in the social media attacks, we have been leveled, we have been bribed, we have been paid money, oil money have reached. And I wish those who are leveling us would have seen what we were facing after that particular period of time. After the disclosure, we got a lot of security pressure on why do we disclose it? We disclose it because simply we need to limit them. If you don't disclose it, they will add it forward. So now coming back to your question, the option we have at hand now as we're speaking, and by the way, you can see how international community play a role, and that's why I like the concept of Dr. Jane, that as citizens we take responsibility. We should not depend on any other people. Now see the way how the Troika issuing a joint statement with the EU and shifting their priorities, shifting their language, even giving elbow to the parties. Thanks for extension, but proof that you are going to deliver, which is a language that we as a civil society, we have been calling when we have been asked to deliver a speech in Freedom Hall, which is actually also a speech they consider as an aggressive speech. But anyway, I have to communicate the message of the citizens. So in simplest way, I would like to say, based on that context I'm speaking, the parties, per the Revitalized Peace Agreement, legally have Article 8.4 that empower them to trigger the amendments. And if you read Article 8.4 of the Revitalized Peace Agreement, and with paragraph 4 of the preamble, the parties were defined, who are the parties to trigger that's why they ran out with it, as 5 parties that were enshrined, which of course legally we can't argue, they have that legitimacy per the agreement. But I feel that my recommendation, since the option of extension is already embraced by the parties, and we're unable to pull them down, and also the region and the global community have already given a secondment of the extension, I think my answer is that yes, still we should have the spirit to discuss. And even the ideas raised by Dr. Jane, I think the extension gives us now political legitimacy, a framework. For example, I've been telling a lot of people, say, now time has come for us to come openly and start putting frameworks of how can technocratic government take over if the 2 years, even not 2 years, the first 1 year, when these parties fail, we should be right now discussing process and procedures, how to bring a technocratic government. Because when talk of technocratic government, there are people who are questioning, how do you bring it up? But I think now with the extension, we have a complete political avenue to discuss the option of technocratic government. That's what I'd like to say. My conclusion is that this particular period also let women know, and speaking to women, we are going to go for elections. If we're ending it by elections, with all this acceptance from AU, from EU, from Troika, from everybody, we should not be undermining that let's forget about the extension. We're against the extension, and let's not think about the next political step. We'll be taken up by surprise of events. So somehow we need to balance the way how Dr. Jane say, let's balance. Yes, if you stand on that side, like, look here, this can't make logic, but also let others start preparing the scenarios. If scenario of election come now under extension, and it happened that the environment become conducive with open up of political space, with open up of civic space, which I'm not convinced that the opening up political space and civic space is going to be easy, because as this female journalist was detained in Lake State less than 2 days ago, Ayo were arrested as we speak. Per now in Jongole, the governor, Denai, have dismissed 2 SOA members, and the chief whip of the SPLM was suspended simply for scrutinizing the Minister of Finance on how they're using public revenue, or what do you call the revenue collected. So those are indicators that the open or civic space is not going to be free. We have to pay a cost for it. But I think for me, right now, we may need to start discussing about elections as one of the political events that may come under the extension. And here, these are my recommendations. I've shared a diagram with our system when I was asked to invite it. I say now the focus has to be on 3 milestones. 1 milestone is political processes. Women start thinking about how do we now take advantage to register political parties that are women driven, that these political parties will go for election, because we need to discuss now the post situation, how it's going to look like. Now women need to start sitting down and looking at constitutional making process. Women need to sit down and start looking at the election process. So 3 milestones: political parties process, constitutional process, electoral process, and specifically intellectuals like Dr. Jane will start providing options with this particular environment that is in. What options can we provide for the women who might be potential aspirants? And how do we mobilize women to become a potential aspirants? Because honestly, kanja nyakama aligo wo alma ligo kalas rusufok jadafok le nyakama, we all run for the nyakama. So you don't want to go for nyakama with sense. As long the men say now nyakama time has come, let's all go for the nyakama. So for me, these are things that, yes, we still have option to discuss this extension period, and we look at the scenarios, because as intellectuals, we can't leave the possible scenarios that are coming. We look at all scenarios that are coming, and we start strategizing ourselves how to take advantage of every scenario that we have looked. If the scenario of government collapse by December, what do we have? If a scenario that now international, regionally, there's acceptance for the government to go, what do we go for it? How do we go for it? If a scenario that we're going to go for elections, what do we prepare? So for me, there's options still at hand that we shouldn't limit ourselves in one angle, but we should be open up that we look at all various angles, because as intellectuals in this particular forum, the option of not completely zeroing ourselves to one option in the box, without seeing that around the box there's other options, may not help us. So that's my appeal, that yes, my answer is still we have opportunities to discuss the extension and strategize ourselves how to take the advantage of the extension if there's a change of political attitudes, because the language is now changing political attitudes. And you have seen very clear now, yesterday, because the pressure is too much on the leaders, and this is why I would like to bring to the attention of Dr. Jane and other intellectual women in this platform, in terms of, if we start looking without emotions, if we start looking without egos, if we start looking scientifically into this particular political development, yesterday is for the first time, President Salva and Vice President Riek Machar have met, discussing on hardcore issues. What are these hardcore issues? The national security law. Because they are feeling now pressure is coming, both of them are targets. So they start building consensus of mutual benefit. You are my enemy, I'm your enemy, but all of us are enemies of the citizens. So citizens want to kick us all out. So let's build a certain strength to face them. So that culture is merging between the 2 principles that I've seen yesterday. And yesterday they discussed sharing of power in the administrative areas, which they have not discussed it for the last 5 years. And for the first time for president, let me share with you honestly, so that you see how practical it is. When I was addressing the citizens in the Freedom Hall during the signing of the roadmap, Riek quoted me several times. And I remember one of the things Riek have called for President Salva is that, President Salva, please, I need a political space opening. And Salva responded, saying no. He said clear body language. And even speeches are not. But when they saw already AU gave them, oh, thank you, bad. They see Troika and EU, thank you, bad. They see governments like Ethiopia, Uganda, thank you, bad. Yesterday, what they decided, Salva yesterday ordered the speaker that all the bills that were passed in the parliament in the absence of the IO should be returned back to the parliament and should be subject for deliberation of the IO. Why that change of attitudes? Simply, they have seen somehow their classmates are telling them, though you are failing the exams, try hard, you may sit supplementary exams. So the concept is now extension for them is a political supplementary exams to either come back to leadership or go. So here they can build consensus. So why should we watch them for that? We also need to take our own strategies. As they're preparing to sit for supplementary exams, how do we set the tough questions for them not to pass so that they fail for good? So for me, these are still options that we have hopes or we have opportunities to discuss the extension, and specifically from women angle, the 3 milestones that I have defined. The question of political party processes, constitution making processes, election processes. Then we should push them to a corner that the benchmarks for these 3 processes is the unification of security and defense sector. It's a question of finance and economic reforms. It's a question of transitional justice. So that those benchmarks will make us to corner them in the 3 milestones that I've mentioned, which are all political. So as Women Intellectuals Forum, I like to say, intellectually, let's not give up. Let's push them. As long as they're going, let us not be like the disciples. When Jesus is going to pray, they sleep. When Jesus came back and Jesus asked them, why are you sleeping? If I'm to be one of the Women Intellectual Forum member among those apostles, I would have asked Jesus, Uncle, why do you decide to go to pray alone in the mountain? You could have told us they're going to for prayer. So we should not allow these politicians to play the game for their best interests. We should squeeze them and honorable and peacefully push them away and say, thank you very much. With your revolutionary behaviors, time has come. We've closed the chapter for revolutionary. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you. This is a well-explained situation that you people are going through. So I wanted to ask Dr. Jane Kani, do you have any reaction to his explanation? You're still muted.
Yeah, Jane,
I think my reaction is that everybody has their own opinion, but from my opinion and based on what our brother is explaining, it is the same people. The same people who have been there since 2005. Let's just go back to 2005 when the peace agreement was signed. And they were given the responsibility of running the government until the referendum period. And we had the referendum. We had our country. The same people took our country back after we gained our independence after so many years. They took it back to war, you know? And that war continued until today. So my point is that, yes, maybe some people are still like our brother Edmund Yakane, that we should discuss the peace agreement and also the extension as he just mentioned. But I think under the same leadership, it's not going to bring good results for ordinary people and also for people who are living in the diaspora, who are following what's happening in South Sudan. We in the diaspora now, we are the one actually subsidizing the people in South Sudan. We help our people sending money for them so that they can get medicine, they can get food, they can get something to eat better. So there's a point that was mentioned in the explanation by Brother Edmund that many people are now forming community defense to defend their communities. Why that? We have been living in that part of the country for so many years in South Sudan. Why now people are forming community defense? Because the government actually generated the situation where communities are attacked and then people have to take arms to their hand. And that's why if we continue to talk about the revitalization of the peace and also the extension, then this situation will become worse and worse and worse. The bottom line is people have to think beyond something, because you can't repeat the same thing over and over and expect new results. People have to move beyond the revitalized peace agreement. Secondly, the extension has not yet started. The agreement is ending in February 2023. From now until 2023, women are not going to sit just back and wait until the extension kicks in. People are going to continue their advocacy and campaign for change in South Sudan in different ways. So that's my response to the points that are raised. And the other thing is that when people go to the street, people are going to die. Yes, people always die. People have been dying when people are fighting for independence during the first war in the first civil war in Sudan, and also the second one. People died. And if we are concerned about the death of the people, so why are we not concerned about the death of the people who are being killed every day in South Sudan? These are also loss of lives, right? The women who are raped every day, that's also another something that we have to think about. So those are just minor. But if somebody go to the street and kill, we have to be concerned about that. We have to be concerned about what's happening now. You know, we have to be concerned about everything that's happening in South Sudan now. People, I was watching the roads. People cannot even move from one location to another. The roads are worse than when I was in middle school. When I was in middle school, and imagine how far that was. So we have to think differently. And about the election, about the extension is just for these SPLM factions to maintain power, nothing else. They are not going to do anything. They are not going to implement. Based on the report that they shared with us, with everybody, the quote unquote roadmap. I listened to that speech during in the Freedom Hall, and Riek Machar actually said only 27% of the provisions of the agreement are implemented. The other 72+% are not yet implemented, and this is in 3 years. Imagine how long is it going to take them actually to implement the other 72% that is not implemented. Also, the question that they didn't explain is why they couldn't actually implement the provisions in the period that was given to them, the 3 years that was given to them. And how are they going to do it, the 72% in 2 years only? So the bottom line is, yes, the agreement maybe is good for other people, but for majority of us, and including myself, we need to move beyond the peace agreement. We have to find other ways of doing that, because election is not going to happen under the same leadership, because they're going to rig it for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you for the reaction. I can see Honorable Betty's internet is not stable. Maybe I can go to our brother Edmund, sorry, since Honorable Achan's network is not stable. It is alluded that you recently presented the civil society organization during an event where the Revitalized Peace Agreement was extended, the one in the Freedom Hall. This causes an outcry, like you explained earlier, from the civil society organizations and various South Sudanese groups. Can you please briefly explain your role at that event? And then what important message did you learn from attending the event?
Thank you very much. I managed to gather myself on my computer after shifting from one internet to another. I'm using modem, and now I can see Dr. Jane very clear. Of course, I still repeat also Dr. Jane's statement. In the culture of democracy, you are measured by how much you respect opinion of others. So those opinions are always a principle of rationale, and we're in intellectuals forums space. So yeah, first, I'd like to say when I was in that event, there was an outcry, insults, leveling, some whom by then lost trust. And of course, these are political processes. You don't have a permanent friend and a permanent enemy in the political arena. It depends on the circumstances of where you engage or you get involved. And that's why you see today Uhuru and Raila Odinga are friends, though by then William Ruto and Uhuru are friends. These are political cultures. That's why even in US, Trump have to bring militias to White House because of political attitudes. And so for me, I like to raise this maturity first. First, when we're involved in the peace process, there's nobody who is licensed to be a legitimate person to accreditate a voice of civil society. I know, and I know some of them who wrote those messages. When we're going for IGAD in the first time, we're invited per our institution performance on the ground by IGAD. IGAD have not asked one single person that give us recommendation for civil society. And that's why when some of them are shouting, I say, I'm sorry, what you're demonstrating is clearly is the ego and it is emotions. And this is always how African politics are defined, by where somebody believes where he is standing, he is overall, whatever he say must be the last. But don't give chance of other opinion. And this is the problem in Africa in terms of intellectualism that we are. Somebody stand concretely. Yeah, you have the right to be rigid on your position, but your position, you can't sanction anybody to be on your position. You should give chance for others to go for that. So when I went there are people who believe that I went there as a soft with the bribes. Some say oil money have landed to our account of SEPO. Some say I'm ready to be replacing Atenyewek. Some were saying I'm going to be replacing Makwei. Some even went further, say, Edmond, we have seen your name in the proposal of becoming the governor of Central Bank. I say, no, I'm not an economist. I don't commit suicide to go to a field that I don't have any science about it. These things are not a joke. These things require responsibilities. So I was insulted, Equatorian, betrayed, and all this. I don't care about that. And then, as I said, for me, I've learned how emotional our society is. And I've learned how egos deeply we have in our hearts. And also I've seen a culture of how much some of us are undermining others. They believe that the only perfect people and they have the opinion. And of course, as an intellectual, I just see them clearly. I'm laughing, I'm smiling for them. So, and what the challenge is that none of them come and ask me, why do you take that stand? So that I reason and I explain myself. None of them. Second, the people who believe that just being there, it is a golden plate given for you to be there. No, we have to fight for it. As an activist, we have to fight for it. So one thing that I like to tell you, those who are saying, oh, I went on my own and I represent civil society without civil society consensus, I would like to tell them, tell me who is there legitimate that will accredit civil society to go. The same way you're occupying your space without my consent is the same way I'm occupying my space without your consent. So when you sit somewhere there and you believe you have a consent of insulting me, believe that also you need to believe that I have the same consent. I have the same person to insult you where I am. As long none of us is legally consenting other. Yes, I know we need to have collective voice, but we can't mix our political interest. And I know some of them who challenge me. They were by then 2 days ago, the darling friends of the system. Simply because they lose political gain, now they turn themselves to the opposition. I know them very well. I'm not new in South Sudan. And I know some of them are using civil society as a ladder to gain political seat. They're not genuine. They're not honest. Not all of them. I know some of them. And I know some of them are tribalistic. Simply because Edmond is from Equatorial, let's fire him. And I've seen in social media, even some equating me to be uncle to Tomasiro, to be uncle to me. I don't care about the death of Denka, Nuer. I only care about Equatoria. All these are all rubbish for me. And I don't waste my time for it. That's one thing I'd like to make it very clear. But what I've learned is this. I have learned when we start bargaining that particular game, and I'm repeating myself, honestly, Salva and Riek are building consensus because they are now common enemy of the population. That's something I want to make it very clear. Like what Jane was saying, under their leadership, there'll be no credible election. They have realized that citizens are mobilizing, and citizens are mobilizing against one of them. Citizens are mobilizing for both of them to go. That's one they know it. And that's why yesterday there's consensus. Something that unable to resolve in the last 5 years, if you start from 2018, but they're able to resolve yesterday by saying, take the laws back, which we have never seen in the past. That's one thing I'd like to make it very clear. The messages I told you.
Can I just interject here? Can I say, is it a good thing or a bad thing for these two leaders to build consensus and to stand strong facing the citizen of South Sudan?
Let me tell you, if they're building their consensus to give us all the required democratic rights to exercise our political choices of what we want, the results of the ballot box will determine. That's one thing that, but if they're building, there's something that I invented. There's a theory I used to challenge. I know later Dr. Priscilla, and then was really very harsh on me, and some SPLM members, I know them very well, they're harsh on me. There's one time I issued a statement. When SPLM want to loot us, when our political leaders want to loot us, they build consensus. Like what I've done for the dredging of the rivers. It's for the first time for you to see Wane Ega, Riek Machar, Angelina Ten, and then Taban Deng, Michael McQuay to be in one camp of supporting dredging of the rivers. Because it's a sense of looting. That's why they're able to build that consensus.
But when they want to kill us, they disagree. So when the theory of killing the citizen, they disagree to give an agenda to take away their lives. But when the time of looting the citizen, they reach consensus. So if election is defined for them as an opportunity of looting, they can build consensus. But can they build their consensus and give us all our constitutional and democratic right to exercise our choice? They will see what happened. And I will tell you, I'm coming from here. One of my uncles, like Clement Janda, one time came for elections and say, people ask him, we have never seen all this time say, no, we're dealing with big issues up there. I'm in Darfur, I'm anywhere. Another old woman tell him that, look here, the tree that takes you to the highest branch of the tree, today we're cutting it down so that you join under the tree. They were voted out. And you see credible SPLM renowned people around to John Gering were all voted out of the elections. And they're one confusing us right now. That's not of them clean. So that's one thing I'll say. But one thing I've learned with my role there, after all, I'll tell you honestly here, when I delivered that speech, immediately I got more than 10 threats inside the hall. Forget about before I leave home. People have power have threatened me. One, some of them say you have insulted us. Why? I ask why. They say first, you have asked the question, what miracle are we going to do in the 2 years that we have not done in the 3 years? I say, yes, that's a genuine question. And the question of the economics, I've told them very clear. How comes now £1 is all, $1 is 65 pounds, and black market is, central bank is auctioning rate of $1 with the black market. They're auctioning dollars in the central bank with the rate of black market. What do you expect the black market to respond? You're putting 6.1. The black market will go for 7. And who owns the auctioning? I know I have track record of 7 firms that are gaining. 3 are commercial banks, which are owned by Kenyan and Ethiopian. 4 of them are Forex Bureau, which are owned by the same politicians who are supporting the auctioning. So they go and buy the dollars for themselves, take to their Forex Bureau and fly them out of the country. So, and that is what I question. And that's what some people blame me that because of my statement, that's why the central bank governor was sacked and the minister. I'm happy. If my statement make them to be sacked, I'm happy. And even I'm waiting for my vote to sack them out. That is still, if a statement can make them to be dismissed, my ballot box will decide the future I want. And that's why I'm coming from a background that we are not concerned, or we are not really advocating for violence, but we're advocating that respect our political right to exercise our political choices. Don't squeeze for us in the space. Don't deny us the space. Don't be aggressive. Allow us to show you what we want. Without us fighting you or you fighting us. That is the culture of political maturity. If we can have that political maturity, honestly, I will tell you, none of these leaders, and let me tell you, I want to use this platform. Some of them are outside there in diaspora. They are issuing political statements. I would like to tell you, the citizens of South Sudan have reached to the level that the remnants of this politics of 1983 until 2001, honestly, none of them is clean. Some of them today went and brand them, they're green, they're blue, but we know they mess up with that when they were in power. But because now they lose power, they turn their colors to be. So this culture of chameleons, the only thing is that allow us to exercise our political rights, like the way how Dr. Jane was saying. Give us the choice. Don't control us. Don't squeeze us. Don't deny us. Don't restrict for us. And allow us go free to the ballot box. I will tell you, none of them, I'm declaring here, none of them will come back. All of them have to go back to their farms. And if they want, because we believe on honorable and peaceful way of their living power, they will go off to their farms and let them give us the seats and they see how we want to govern the country. But unfortunately, as I say, we are not dealing with the politicians that are coming from school of politics. We are dealing with politicians that some of them are intellectuals, but from the culture of revolutionary political behaviors. That's my answer.
Thank you. Welcome back, Honorable Betty. I see your internet has been going on and off. Can you hear me now? I think she's frozen.
Yeah, and me as well.
Yes.
But also here, internet's really problematic. I have to be honest with you, especially if you use hotel internet. It's going to, like right now for me, I have to shift to modem, to be honest with you. Sorry.
Let me then go to Dr. Jane. Does the type of peace agreement determine the role and participation of women in peace building? Like how can the role of women be strengthened in the negotiation and peace building process? Like our brother explained earlier, how we can, as women intellectuals, be part of this and prepare ourselves. How can that be? And how can we work on building that?
Okay, thank you for that question. And before I start answering the question, I just want to say to my brother Yakani that I'm happy that those of Kir and Mashar are now building consensus. The bottom line is we have to know whether that consensus is built for the benefit of the people of South Sudan, or is built because the people are rising up, so they want to come with a different strategy of how to continue being in power. So I'll wait for that, and I'll ask you maybe after 2 years whether that consensus actually is for us or for a specific. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Back to the question, I think, in my opinion, yes, there are different types of peace agreements that people sign. And I think if you look at different countries that went through conflicts and then they sign a peace agreement, they always have determination on how women actually participate in the peace building. And the best example is the one of Rwanda, for example. If you look at that, I think many people after the genocide, and then people came back and sat down and started to address some of their problems. Many women actually were able to be part of the political process. So in my opinion, yes, it determines actually how women play a role in any aspect, whether in peace building process or in any other advocacy issues that concerns women. And here I'm going to touch on at least two types of peace agreements. And one of them is a power sharing agreement, which is many of us actually know that kind of peace agreement. And this type of power sharing agreement is the one that actually geared towards serving the interests of the political and the military elite that signed that agreement, or the warring parties that came together and said, okay, we have to stop this conflict. We need to get together so that we can have peace. So if we look at this type of peace, the power sharing agreement, the role of women in the implementation process, for example, and even in the post-conflict peace building efforts, is not always shaped by the women interests themselves. Women don't decide what they want to do, but it's always shaped by the agenda and interests of the people who signed the agreement, whether those people are political elites or military elites. So women actually don't have that much power. And I know that some women actually participated in the peace processes, but sometimes when peace is signed, sometimes women actually doesn't have. So that kind of peace agreement always limit the way in which women participate. And also women's interests and needs are always secondary in this kind of peace agreement. Yes, there will be promise that, okay, when we sign the peace agreement, we're going to do this to women, we're going to do this to women, but sometimes that doesn't happen the way in which women actually expected that to happen. Also, for example, in this peace agreement, the role of women become like a cosmetic or provincial, as they are only given roles that serve the interests of the political party, and also to show how they can actually attract the idea that, okay, this government is inclusive, is including women. So the international community will look at it and says, okay, we have, this government actually has so many women in position of power, so let's support this agreement. So women actually women are used actually to be part of this idea of gender equality, but actually it's not gender equality, because if there's gender equality, then women should not be experiencing what's going on in South Sudan. So that's why this kind of disagreement are the ones that we have in South Sudan. The one that was signed in 2015 and then revitalized in 2016. These two agreements actually were power sharing agreement, and it focused on how power is shared between the parties who signed the agreement. And that's the major problem. So although women were included, as our previous speaker mentioned about the inclusion of women as partners to the agreement, sometimes women are not fully incorporated as equal partners in the negotiation process, for example. They will start at the beginning, at the back of the seats, and then gradually, okay, why don't we just bring our women to the front? And yes, they can share their agenda and everything, but still, at the end of the day, when the agreement is signed and then at the implementation process, sometimes those agendas are not actually fulfilled. And that's why this kind of agreement is sometimes very difficult. And we can look at this in the context of the implementation of the 2015 and 2018 peace agreements. We have so many women who are included in the position of power in South Sudan. Like the last agreement, the Revitalized one, actually brought the first female defense minister in South Sudan, the first female speaker of the Revitalized National Legislative Assembly. We have a female minister of gender. I'm not sure if she's still there or not. And also many members of the parliament, like our honorable here, Betty Ogwaro. All of them actually are in these positions. And sometimes people expect that, okay, if we have that number of women in these key positions, their being there actually will reflect in the life of the people who are in the street or in the neighborhood or in the villages. And sometimes that doesn't happen, Still, we have people who have been traumatized every day. We have seen women who are being raped every day. People in the villages actually are displaced. They can't even cultivate their crops because of the displacement and all the things that are happening in those areas. So the question then is, do women who are in political power actually make key decisions pertaining to national security? For example, they decide, okay, let's go and burn that village, or there are specific people who are making those decisions. Are they making decisions on issues of war, for example? They are not, because women always, they don't want, because people who will be affected by the war are children of these women. Women give birth to children. They have husbands, they have brothers, and all that. So then we have to ask whether being there as a female leader actually can help in the process of minimizing some of the aspects that are happening to women, whether in terms of displacement or war or all that. And also, does the role of women actually in peace building effective in this context of peace agreement that's power sharing? In my opinion, that's not the case. So that's one type of peace that we have now, the power sharing agreement that we have in South Sudan. And I think it's not effective for the role of women in peace building. Briefly, that's what I can just say. And if we look at the other peace agreement that I'm thinking about, is the people-centered and inclusive peace agreement. And in this kind of peace agreement, actually, it includes everybody. It's not limited to specific political parties. And I think the idea of limiting peace agreement to specific political parties did not start with the Revitalized peace agreement or the 2015 agreement. Even if you look at the CPA agreement, it was between the NCP and the SPLA. Many political parties were excluded in that agreement. So if we really need a peace agreement, this people-centered peace agreement that include everybody, including women, for example, of diverse backgrounds, not specific women from a specific area, for example. It includes youth, civil society, government, opposition groups, and even people from the diaspora, academia, and other people, especially people with special needs, because this is what is always missing in our discussions of peace and peace building. We always ignore people who have special needs, and we have so many people who have special needs in South Sudan. So this kind of peace, which is a people-centered and inclusive peace agreement, is not yet present in South Sudan. What we have now is the power-sharing peace agreement. And I think this is what many South Sudanese, including myself, actually want, this kind of peace agreement that brings everybody, so that people can actually share their own concerns and also share their strategies of how South Sudan should be governed and how people should live in that country. And that's why I just want to bring an event that happened in this year, actually on June 3rd, 2020, actually. And that event actually was held by the Department of African and African American Studies at Fordham University. And many people actually came to that event. People from the government, people from the opposition groups, people from the civil society, and even people from the 3 Troika countries, US, UK, and Norway, and also representative from the St. Egidio who attended that meeting. And during that meeting, actually, many people, the question that was raised is whether the Revitalized Peace Agreement has a purpose. And many people have diverse responses to that question. But the consensus was that that was reached among majority of the people who actually attended that meeting is that the peace agreement actually is not working, and that there is a need to rethink creatively about a new social contract for South Sudan and South Sudanese so that people can move forward. And somebody said, actually, if that did not happen, it's going to be too late because so many things are going to happen in South Sudan. So that's the peace that actually people are now yearning for, a people-centered peace agreement. And this idea also was echoed by many civil society groups and other concerned South Sudanese, whether inside or outside the diaspora, that or outside South Sudan, is that we really have to look at a new way of how to bring peace and stability in that country. And many people actually reacted, especially after the announcement of the extension of the agreement. People just said, what's going to happen? So many people actually reacted. They said, okay, they don't want the extension, because once this peace agreement is extended for another 2 years, it means additional suffering. And that's what I actually think, because more suffering actually is going to come. And we have seen that immediately. It's happening now. It's continuing to happen. So in other words, a people-centered peace agreement that embraces all political forces, civil society groups, faith-based institutions, women and youth, academics, and the diaspora, and those with special needs, and many others, as partners. I'm emphasizing this, bringing all these people as partners, not just somebody who is following somebody else. We are all as equal partners. And address the root of the crisis of South Sudan is actually required to move South Sudan forward. Yes, we can do whatever we can do, small, but if we don't look at the structural issues that are affecting South Sudan, where everybody is included, because exclusion of anybody always creates tension. And that's what happened during the CPA, when some parties were excluded from the peace agreement, the CPA agreement in 2005, and those of NCP and SPLM only signed the agreement. The other parties in Sudan actually were not happy. Immediately, even before the signing of the peace agreement in 2003, the war in Darfur broke out because of the exclusion of people. And that's why an inclusive, and also we have to define the word inclusivity itself. What does it mean when we say include people? We just include people because we know them, or include people from different background, and also not only background, whether it's ethnic or regional or other backgrounds, but even people with different views must be included in this peace agreement, so that everybody will come. Like us here, for example, Mayakani and myself, we don't have the same views, but still we can sit down as individuals who are concerned about the people who are suffering in South Sudan. And then we sit down, and after discussion, and I'm telling you this actually, when people start talking and facing each other, not through the internet, then people will start thinking, okay, I think we should change. I think we should leave this and start thinking about this. And always when we come to this kind of peace agreement, we have to come with the interests of the people in our heads, that we are doing this actually to help our people who have been suffering long time ago. And we are doing this because we want to make our country better, because South Sudan now is becoming like a laughing stock for many people outside there. What's wrong with you guys? You have all these resources. You have water. You have the oil. You have other minerals. You have all the riches. But why are you doing this? Why are you killing yourself? Why the leaders are just doesn't care about the people? Why people are exporting food, even tomato, from the neighboring countries? Why don't we actually use our land to produce our own food, organic food, so that we can eat fresh produce from our own country. We have people in agriculture, like Honorable Betty Achan is an agriculturalist, and there's so many people who are agriculturalists, and we have the land. Why don't we just do that? So when we come to this peace agreement, when people come to this peace agreement, we have to come with this mindset, not the mindset that, okay, ana lazim der wadana position there, and lazim der kun wazir, and der kun governor, and der kida. We are not going to go anywhere. That's why the power sharing agreement doesn't work, because it's tested in South Sudan and it didn't work, and it will not work until all of us come together from our different backgrounds. So that's what I can say, and that actually will help women to do peace building, because peace building is not a one thing process. It's a process that goes beyond conflict. It goes even into post-conflict situation. It goes into how people can detect future conflict and how to stop those conflicts from happening. So it's a long process. It's a part of our life. And if we look at, I'm going to stop soon. If we look at our traditional ways of settling disputes, we usually do that. We start with the family, for example. If there's a dispute between a wife and a husband, for example, this is just an example. We don't always call 911 like what we do here in our part of the world. Always people go and talk to the elders. So elders from the other family and elders from the other family, they come together and say, okay, why don't we sit down and discuss these issues, because we don't want to create divisions among our people. Because marriage is not between two people, it's about the whole community. And that's how people establish. So peace building, although it's a Western concept, but still it was practiced among South Sudanese people and other African people in the sense of how disputes were settled. And I think we can do that if we come with this mindset of not for positions, but for the interests of everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, you have raised really very good points. And before I can go ahead and give a chance to our brother Edmund, I'm just hoping Honorable Betty's internet will get stable so she can participate. It's getting really heated and very interesting discussion. I wanted to acknowledge 2 points that you have raised, Dr. Jane, that when we talk about peace building or peace agreement, we need to bring everybody in, including our disabled community. We have a huge disabled community in Africa, and they are always cut out. Leave alone those who are like veterans, who got their disabilities through contributing to the country, civil war that was going on. We have that big group that is always not brought to the table. And the other thing also, the point of like, when we talk through the internet, it's something different. But when we sit on the same table, you can see the discussion is going towards a different direction. So it's always powerful to sit down and discuss than communicating through internet and emails and insulting each other. So if I was to be, 4 of us are supposed to be in the same table, we can differ in our points, but still we have that mutual agreement of like, okay, we are all the same people, we are aiming for peace, but in different directions. So that one is there. Now I can see Betty, Honorable Betty is up now. Can I give her a chance at least just to join, because we have been discussing and she's missing out. Honorable Betty, I wanted to say, based on the explanation Dr. Jane just gave, what are the steps that need to be taken to guarantee the effective participation of women in peace building? Not only women, even our disabled community and youth. What are those steps that need to be taken in order to bring all of us in the same discussing table? Hello? The interest of time, I will give the floor to you, Edmund, because we don't want to keep it long. I can see Honorable Betty in the background, but seems the network is not stable.
But also, I think you need to advise Betty, if she have it, I think she need to put her video off. Sometimes balancing between video and audio in some internet providers is very hard. Maybe she put her video off.
Is that question cleaner?
Pardon? I was asking you, given the steps that Dr. Jane mentioned about bringing everybody into the table and talking and recognize our other communities that are not included. What are the steps that we need to take, to guarantee the effectiveness of our people participating in this peace building?
Okay. Cleaner, I don't know, asking to on you.
I think we are not hearing you.
If you have access to Betty via a phone, can she maybe move where I am to help her access to internet?
To me, to Edmond.
Betty, it's for you, Betty. Can you put your video off so that we can get you? Betty is for you, and can you put your video off so that you can pick up well?
Now the floor is yours, Honorable Betty.
I don't know if you want to hear me. I have a lot of issues with the actions. I think we are talking the revitalization period. Is it still useful for us women to discuss the period? Since 3 years, women were marginalized. I would say it is really more than ever useful now that the women should begin to look into the extended period. Because now, with the extensions, a few things are going to happen. The government will have to start engaging the community in looking into census. How are they going to do that? They will have to look into conducting trainings for the coming elections, voters registration, the peace, the ceasefire, which did not happen really during the 3 years period. Can it happen now? We are seeing people being arrested instead of being tried, and then the court decide their fate, decide the fate of these people, and then mass kill them in front of everybody, including their and children, which is really not acceptable, the human right, and even against the RRCs, because the Revitalized Peace Agreement says it is only the president that can agree on to whether a person is to be hanged, killed, or pardoned. So the women must now begin to play a very important role now to see to it that these illegal things happening should not happen. Women played very important role in the referendum. That's why we had more than 60% voters who were women. They should play the same important role in preparation for elections, so that we have peaceful elections, not violent elections. And we really need an elected government. And without the participation of women, I can already see that we will have a lot of violence coming up. But how will women do this if they couldn't do it during the 3 years? Women, first of all, need to unite. There should be a unity of purpose among the women, whether they are organizations, women-led organizations, or individual campaigners, or women at the grassroots. They should begin to work together to see to it that their voices are one, irrespective of which party they are from. Now, most of the parties are part of the government anyway. The major party, like the IO, is part of the government. So the women should begin to work together to really see to it that the parties listen to them and respect the peace agreement. Even the roadmap, which is made now, they couldn't satisfy it in 3 years. But there is need for women to begin to push it to some kind of participation. And it is women who can really bring all other parties who are holding up or holding out together. Because women are wives to these people. Women can talk to their, besides there are women in politics who have the art of talking to these people. They just need a space. Women need a space. We want to appreciate our brother Edmond, who now goes openly campaigning. Women still fear. Women still fear going out into open campaign because now they are even arresting women. We have one of the journalists who just covered a peaceful demonstration. And she was arrested with a number of people, demonstrators. So women begin to fear, if we go out, we will be arrested. Then our children will suffer. Women must now collectively say, if you arrest one, you should arrest all of us. Because what the women are doing is for the goodness of the people, not for themselves. But also it needs a lot of training and capacity building. We need our international supporters to train, to support women in, and to also finance the women-led organizations, because they are already doing trainings, they are already going out into the communities. And we need to disseminate again this Revitalized Peace Agreement. The women did a very good job through UNDP, UN Women, by disseminating the Revitalized Peace Agreement. And the women on the ground had asked this Revitalized Peace to be translated into a language they can understand so that they can read by themselves. It has been translated in Arabic and it was disseminated. And the people who go disseminating are mostly the people who speak the language of the area. So women have done a lot of work in disseminating, but it's not enough. People have not understood it. So training needs to be correct, dissemination needs to be correct, and then women need to be empowered, not to fear, to speak out the truth. Because we want peace. We wanted peace as soon as yesterday. Now we want the peace as soon as this morning. The government should really ensure that not only the 35% that should be enshrined into their institution, the government should increase the number of women participants, especially in areas where they see that women can make a big impact. There is a question which you ask, how will women do that? Is there any provision in the RCs that will allow women to go out and campaign? There are a lot of legal mechanisms. Some are open, some are hidden within the RCs. But quite a lot. First of all, the Revitalized Peace Agreement itself has given women the opportunity to participate and request their participation and demand their participation. 35% is already there. It is not yet fulfilled. Women need to demand that it is not in the element that the voice of women are important. And it is not only the SPLM IG who should fulfill the 35%. It is across all parties. So even the government at the executive level, we are asking the president if parties. He is the head of the party. He is the head of the government. So he should look at it holistically, not looking at the IG only. If the 35% is not fulfilled, the president himself should really feel it. Even IG did not meet it. We should have had 7 women in the ministerial positions. We had less, we had 5. Even where women were appointed in very important positions where women can make a difference. For example, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Why do you remove a woman and then replace her with a man? Why do you remove a very capable woman and replace her with a man of your choice? So we want these instruments. Women should use it, and I really want to urge our women: if things like this happen, don't keep quiet. Let us not keep quiet. And then we have the constitution, because the RRCs is already included in the constitution. We still don't have a court, but we have that we can use to move and ask for the rights of women, which is actually the rights of the people. And then we have the National Action Plan, which the Ministry of Gender has made, which includes almost all the ministries. This is also an very strong instrument that women should use, because within it, the 4 pillars addresses the issues of women. Issues of protection, issues of prevention, issues of promotion, issues of participation. And women actually had been practicing this even before the CPA was signed. Women of South Sudan already saying, please prevent these atrocities. Please don't rape the women. Please prevent the men from raping the women. Please protect the women. Please, we want to participate. We want to be on the table. Women had already been saying this before the CPA. So women should not now slide back. We need to continue so that the voices are louder, because now we have more enlightened women than before. Now we have more educated women before. In the past, they use, where are the women? They are more than 60% of the population, and you still ask, where are the women? Now the women who are educated are much more than the options that are available for women to participate in. We also have other instruments which we can use. The UN Security Council Resolution 1355, I've already said, the 4 P's are very strong pillars that women can use. We have the CEDAW. South Sudan has already signed on CEDAW. So if you sign that there should be all forms of discrimination against women, why not practice it? What we need is to see the implementation, not just the signature, not just agreeing that yes, we can do it. Oh, let us stay. We want to implementation itself. And then we have other regional instruments that women can also turn to, which South Sudan has signed and has been part of it. The African Union, the intergovernmental gender policies. We have the Maputo Protocol, we have the East African Community. If these other countries of East African communities are able to use these instruments effectively, so why are we women of South Sudan not also using it effectively? So that goes back into training the women and also capacity building the women so that they know their rights, they know where they should go, they know what the instruments they can use. It is very, very, very important. So I really urge our plans to help, even the government itself, the government to help train the women, give money to the civil society organizations which are already training so that they can train further, they go up to the bombers. At the moment, we are only training in towns and sometimes in county headquarters, state headquarters. We haven't reached the Payams. We haven't reached the bombers. So we need to reach those areas. So, but what are the challenges that women would face along the way trying to do all this? One thing I know that we women in South Sudan, we really lack strong leadership that can bring all women together. We have women in strong positions, but up to now, these women are not able to bring the women together to fight for the rights of women. These women in strong positions still look at themselves as individuals who are appointed because of their merits. Yes, but some of these positions fought for it. Some of these people, women, fought for it, that it should happen. For example, we have the Speaker of the Assembly. It took women a very long time to fight for this position. Now we have it. This is a third person. This is the person who should rally women together to fight for their rights. Because some of these things would be brought in the parliament, and the women in the parliament would have already been enlightened to take forward. We are happy that we also gained position of the deputy speaker at the Council of States. I know she's a very strong woman. She works with the women at the grassroots, but now I would like her to team up with the speaker and the other women leaders so that we bring the voices of the women together in order to achieve the gains and promote and further the gains that we had in the 3 years, but also the ones that we missed out, we should now get it. What other challenges we see? We know South Sudan is still a very male or patriarchal community, but it is changing. It is changing, and the women can do better and more to improve it. And they cannot improve it by talking to themselves. We have a lot of women meetings all the time. And these women meetings is always women talking to women. No, let us now go out. We want the Yakanis who can talk on the behalf of the women. So unless we expand the periphery of men and where women discuss their issues, we now are exhausted discussing it among us. We should now expand it and discuss it with the men. Let the men who can support women causes come in to help the women, because they will not be really helping women causes. They will be helping the nation. They will be helping implementing the RRCs. And we have this hard line in the government. Find a way to these hardliners, they're only looking at themselves. They are not looking at the nation. And they think anything anybody says that the president is the leader of the country. Everybody the president go the right way. Everybody support the president to lead us into elections. So nobody will be speaking against him. People will be speaking for him to improve. So let the women really get onto the boat in order to see to it happening.
Thank you.
To conclude this by saying, please, women, my one way of recommending the way forward is for you to come together, train, and face the drum. The Revitalized Peace Agreement has been extended, and it is your turn to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. You have explained very, very well. And the ball has been thrown into the plate of our brother, Edmund. I know you want to react to what Dr. Jane explained earlier. And I just wanted to add you, since we are running out of time, I wanted to add into your plate, since the ball has been brought to you, what are the challenges facing women and children in South Sudan today, based on your experience, and what are your recommendations moving forward? So you have 2 minutes to explain because we are running out of time. Thank you.
Now, I'm not really reacting to Dr. Jane's point. I want to confirm one point that Dr. Jane has raised. As we speak now, there's a heavy demonstration going on in Bor, organized by the workers' trade union. Right now, as we speak, Bor is real on strike because of the arrears of salary that were not paid. But what I want to confirm to everybody on this platform that I have done a brief assignment on inquiry into the situation in Libya and the Arab Spring. Though some is not physical, is more virtual. One thing I have learned, that the moment the state control freedom of expression in all spaces, actually the state is mobilizing the citizen to rebel against the state. So restricting freedom of expression politically is interpreted as mobilization of the citizen against the state. And I'll give a practical example in Bor. Yesterday in Bor, there was a debate. I've been working with the parliamentarians in Bor under the State Legislative Assembly. Yesterday, they summoned the minister, the day before, they summoned the Minister of Finance to answer how the state is saving the personal income tax, which is huge of money. In that investigation, the minister was able to prove that this money is being mismanaged by the governor, and the governor remitted this money to an account where one of his bodyguards is a signatory, and the minister was impeached. And the MPs who stood up for driving the agenda for the impeachment of the state of Jongole was the members of SOA, where the governors comes from. So yesterday evening, the governor suspended them from being MPs in the state parliament. And they reached to the level that the deputy governor also come in and suspend the chief whip, which is a member of SPLM. 3 of them were suspended. Today, Bor is on fire. That shows if we can control freedom of expression, even up to the parliament, citizens have no resort. The only resort is to kick you out. And that's why I want to confirm that what Dr. Jane was saying is that the moment you restrict freedom of expression, actually you're mobilizing the citizens against the government. Look in Sierra Leone. This is what happened in Sierra Leone. When the government in Sierra Leone started restricting citizens, now Sierra Leone is on fire. So the same thing will happen to us here. So the only way is politicians have to respect freedom of expression and allow us to speak in the same way how Jane was speaking. If I'm to respond on social media on those attacks, it would have been different. And obviously, as a human beings, consensus is not built by saying yes. Consensus is built through reasoning, through argument. The way we're arguing now, we're building consensus. And this way you get a very fruitful, a best way of building the state you want. We build the state through dialogue. We don't build the state through having too many blue houses, too many white houses, too many jails. No, that one is not, we're not building a state. You're actually destroying the state. The state you build through dialogue. That's what I'm saying. So in 1 minute to conclude, these are my recommendations. Right now, I would recommend for Women Intellectuals Forum to look that women engagement in public issues have to be under the concept of being proactive. Being proactive. From an intellectual's perspective, proactive by offering policy options. Offering options for strengthening women movement. That's very important because I work with the women. I'm standing behind women. I'm here for she. We commemorate the first anniversary of the Speaker of the Parliament right now. And I'd like to tell you, as we commemorate the first anniversary, we are able to bring women speakers who are women in the region. As I'm speaking with you now as Women Intellectuals Forum, we have established something called EAC and SADC Women Speakers Forum. And the Speaker of Uganda is going to host the first conference. So we are trying to infiltrate beyond the normal saying around the participation of women. It's a question now also, we need to start shaping a policy. Yes, we need to balance between the rural engagement and the elite engagement, but with the elite engagement, we need to establish infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure for amplifying the voice of the women is a big issue, even how women are educated. So it's a time intellectuals build the infrastructure, coordinate with the voices on the ground. That's my recommendation, is that we need to build that. In the sense of you, women and children in the country, they are suffering. Women and children are the first victims of this current situation that we're speaking around, being it strikes, being it economical situation, being it whatever. Women are the one real bearing the brand. And normally I tell people that in crisis situation, women are in protective position, men are on run. By the way, take this statement very clear. In a conflict situation, women are in protective position, men are on run. Recently, I told in a conference, I told some people, I say, in any situation that men cannot go, women will go. And that's proof. Wherever men cannot go, women will go. So it means women are in a victim position. So as Women Intellectuals Forum, it's a time for us to be constructively and start building scenarios. We should not lock ourselves into one direction because we may be taken by surprise somewhere. So for me, this one is going to say. Secondly, there's a case studies in South Sudan. I don't want to miss this point because I saw Dr. Jane with me here. I want to take this advantage to communicate. One thing that I've been doing a statistical assessment of women's role in the political arena at national and state level. And Dr. Jane, take this please, and I wish this would take it as a policy. One, the general education sector right now, as per we're speaking, is under the control of a woman. The minister is a female. The chairperson for general education and instruction and the deputy chairperson for general education and instruction in the parliament, both are women. So, female minister for general education. Then we have in the parliament, the specialized committee that think about general, and remember, the foundation of education is general education. Can women demonstrate a strength there? So the question comes, can Women Intellectual Forum become the bridge between the chairperson, the specialized committee, and the women outside? Even if politically we have different positions, but as an opportunity of shaping an agenda, let's try to build some consensus, in which we term sometimes unity of purpose. Though even political, I disagree with you, but unity of purpose, that you have the opportunity, I send you the material and use the material. And that's, I think, the big opportunity for someone like Dr. Jane to start offering to the context we're discussing now. What type of primary education, what type of general education do we need? What type of instruction? And those two female MPs who are chairperson and deputy chairperson raise it as a motion. This one sector. The second sector in the country, environment and forestry. Both the Minister of Environment, Nafon, is a female. The Minister of Agriculture, Justin Lagu, is a female. If you go to the parliament, the environmental committee in the parliament is chaired and deputized by a female. Labor, the same thing, only it's a man who is a minister. But the labor committee in the parliament, in terms of employment policy strategies, and you have seen our youth fighting themselves on regional basis about job opportunities, where sometimes somebody from Western Equatoria want to kill his own brother from Eastern Equatoria because he's in Yambio, he want them to go back to Torit to have the job. And sometimes somebody in Juba want to kill someone from Bor, or someone from Bor want to kill someone from Juba. We have seen among the youth. The labor is now in our hand. How can we do that? Though we may have the question that are those positions given to credible women, which have the expected capacity. Yes, they may not be credible, they may not have that capacity, but let us build an innovative way. How do we communicate to them, even if they have educational challenges? How can they use the power? That's one thing. In the states, 3 states, Jonglei State, Northern Baragazali State, Lexi State, both the speakers and the deputy speakers are women. Can we use that as a case study of a subnational? How do we shape the role of women in legislation at subnational level? These are opportunities that we may start using them to demonstrate women in leadership. Yes, some of them lack capacity, but we cannot insult them and we cannot chase them. And we should have this strategy where if your sister is given a job, instead of you strengthening, empowering her, you want to pull her back with insults. What is your education capacity? You are only handpicked. You know, she is there, or whether she's handpicked, we need to hold her accountable. Because the same men, even the men were not educated, the men were not married, the men were handpicked, but don't challenge them. But when it's a woman, you want to challenge. So the question is, as Intellectuals Forum, what policy strategy can we adapt and start showcasing, testing whether if women is a leadership, like what Dr. Jane have said, that sometimes we campaign for men to come for the leadership, but when women come for the leadership, we don't see the difference in our life. Just asking, really, we have asked them to be in power. They're now in power. Why are we changing life? So sometimes, from an intellectual point of view, let us ask ourselves, are we doing things in a better way? Can we change our strategy of doing things? Can we be innovative? How can we change strategy to motivate them to become a right people in a right place, even if they are wrongly brought to a wrong place? But how do we change that? Because man is playing that game. So as he for she, I would like to say, Women Intellectuals Forum, the opportunity are in your fingertips. But for me also, this is what I will conclude with by saying, with all due respect to your various academical background, let's move away from the trend of always complaining. Walai, kalamta sokuwa ketirde is enough. Let us try to look for options of doing things. Like when people are discussing demonstrations, nothing. The workers' trade union in Bor today are on the street. Their numbers, you cannot kill all of them. So Instead of too much complaining, theories discussing the same thing, Anna Kanya Gatano, Anna Kanya Gisilu, Anna Kanya Jibo, Anna Kanya Arfa, is a time, let's act and let's go beyond the complaints. And I need people like, this is a challenge I'm throwing back to my sister, Dr. Jane, the intellect that you have now, please let the papers flow back to us here on the ground. We will use it. It's a question of exchanging knowledge through paper. So even if you don't meet personally, through papers there, share, say, oh, I've seen the countries like this. This is my proposal. Can you guys see it and use it? And I remember when we were discussing the road of wow, the railway. Remember the document you give us. This document, we sell it out until Broad Sudan to say they want to restructure the railway line from Khartoum to wow. And it's your paper. The knowledge on the paper works beyond. Sometimes you think that you're frustrated, but somebody can use your knowledge and drive it. And one day history will use reference back that by then it was Dr. So-and-so. Let's take the advantage. The challenge is back and I'm rolling back and I'm here. I'm ready. Whatever assignment you want to give me, give me. If I fail, come and blame me, you fail. But also I'll blame you if you don't give me a task. Thank you very much, my sisters.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The other thing, it's always like, let me explain it this way. Sometimes they don't open their ears to hear, you know? So the only thing we need to do as women, we need to keep repeating until one day their ears will open so they can hear us.
They can hear.
That's why you see like women are complaining. We don't want to sit and fold our hands. We need to complain and keep complaining.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to give Dr. Jane your final remarks.
So we're going to avoid the questions?
Because we are running out of time, but then the final remarks, of course, it's like, it includes like the roles, what roles we can, as women, in academia, you as a woman or we in academia play in peace building. What are some of your recommendations moving forward?
So I'm just going to go, I'll list some of the points that I have on the question 3, and then I'll move quickly to the last question. But before I do that, I just want to comment what our brother Yakane actually said. Most of my writings actually are always out there. And I remember when the Ministry of Gender, actually, I think 2 years ago, they prepared their document to be shared by the UN during the UN General Assembly. I saw that one of my publications that was published by the Sudan Institute actually was included in that document as part of the resources. So I'm always open. I don't keep my information for myself. People who are in the academia always want their work to be publicized and known by other people. And I think my work is influencing so many things that are happening in South Sudan. And I'm happy about that. I'll continue to do that. So to my third question, and then I'll go to the last one, is that I just want to say that women can think independently, actually, to chart a new way for peace, a new path for peace. And they can do that through so many ways. And one of the best ways is about organizing. People need to get organized. And I think our sister Betty actually mentioned that women need to get organized so that they'll be able to make change. Because if you're not organized, you'll not be able to do anything. And I think Yakani mentioned that about the civil society. If you're not recognized, you'll not be invited actually to events. So you have to be organized. And also you have to spell out clearly the goals, objectives, and actions that you are going to take to be able to achieve those goals. And organizing then is the first thing. Another thing is also developing a common agenda for women is very important because, yes, there are so many different women's groups. And our sister Betty actually said that people have to have a common purpose. What is the common purpose that women want actually to achieve? And she mentioned something about national action plan. So people have to come up with that agenda that actually reflects the needs of women. And that's a common agenda with a specific program for women to be implemented. Women need to use the social media also as another way of getting their word out. And the social media is very important. We don't have to use it in a negative way where we insult each other and all that. People can use the hashtag for specific campaign issue, for example. Let's say, okay, release this journalist who was arrested. So you can use hashtag on that. You can use, okay, we need changes in the way in which women are treated in South Sudan. That's another way of using the social media in a positive way rather than in a negative way. And also, Yakani mentioned something about education, and I think education is key for women empowerment and also for their role in the peace building process. And you mentioned several of our women who are now leading some of the institutions, whether the educational, general education and other government institutions. Some of us, we don't insult actually our people. Our women, maybe they're working in a very different structural context. You know, the system, the government system that was created or is created in South Sudan sometimes cannot allow people actually to do things that they feel like should be done. And that can constrain people, although they have the heart and the intention of doing good things, they will not be able to do it because of that kind of system, and also because of other cultural perceptions about women in leadership roles and so on. And also another point that I just want to add is the idea of the percentages. Yes, the percentages are good. The 35% women representation is good, but we need to move beyond that. We need to focus only on the political participation of women. We need to move beyond these percentages to address some of the issues that affect women in South Sudan, whether these issues are economic, social, or political, or other environmental issues. And I talked about this actually in details in my report that was published by the SAD Institute, titled A Strategy for Achieving Gender Equality in South Sudan. And that report actually was published in 2014. I did the research within Juba in 2013, before the war broke out. And that report actually is publicized widely, and women actually use it everywhere. And that's very important. People should read that. So that's very important. We need to move beyond the 35%. Yes, there are positive advantages and disadvantages of the 35%, but still we have to think differently. The other thing that I want to touch also on this is the overcoming the perception of politics as a male prerogative. People should not think that, okay, ana mara na bikun fi politics. Politics is for everybody, and politics is everywhere. In our homes, we have political things. Like managing our homes is a political process. We are like people are managing the parents and the children. You have to have negotiation within the family to be in peace. Otherwise, there's going to be no peace in this family. So politics is everywhere. It touches everything, like math touches everything in life. So to the point that I just want to conclude with is that the role of the academic. I'm not going to talk about the barriers to women's unity, because I think Betty touched on some of them. I have several of them that I outlined, actually, including competition for political positions, about discontent between women leaders and women in the grassroots. That's obvious, not only in South Sudan, all over Africa, that also is happening. But what can the women in the academia actually do? I already touched on that. And I can say that writing is a form of resistance. If you write, you are also challenging what is not going on well. And I think most of my writing actually, especially my opinion writing, always challenge what is not going on. So writing and teaching about the important role of women in peace building is very important. And I think we have so many female professors who are in the universities in South Sudan. They should start thinking about how to teach about peace building. And also people in the academia, because they have the space, they can organize workshops, seminars, and training actually on women and peace building, as our sister Betty actually talked about, because training is very important. You have to be trained on what you want to do. And on a general note, I think research and documentation of women and gender history for inclusion in educational curriculum is very important. Because when I was in South Sudan in 2013, for the research, I reviewed some of the social studies books for primary aid. And I realized that actually there's an inadequacy in the information related to women. So we need to do that research so that we document the history of women and also the history of gender. And that's the difference between this is that if we talk about the history of women, we are talking about women issues only, like what women actually did and their contribution to society. And when we talk about gender history, is that we are talking about issues related to gender and relationship between the different genders and how these differences actually influences women's position within the society. So we need to do that, because without doing that, we'll not be able to have a section in the general history of South Sudan about women and the role that they played and some of the issues that they experienced. And then some of my recommendation actually that I'm going to conclude with quickly is that women need to think independently to chart a new path for peace and stability in South Sudan. Women should be prepared ahead of time for any peace negotiation. Like if you're going for a peace negotiation, you have to be prepared. And that is setting their own agenda. And I think some points that Betty mentioned actually talked about that in the previous peace agreement. So people have to set their own agenda or what women actually want to achieve during the peace negotiations, because that's when your voice will be reflected in the peace agreement. Selecting women representative to the peace agreement is key to achieving women agenda. Because if you select a person who is not concerned about the interests of all women, including women with special needs, women in rural areas, women in the low-income communities, it's not going to negotiate in good faith. It's going to negotiate in their own interests as women so that they can get a position. So women need to think about who they select to represent them in any peace agreement or in any event that is going to happen that affect women. It's very important. And I just want to direct people to there was an event that was organized by Lillian Rizik, I think 2020, titled "Do Not Call Them Women," and it's on YouTube. Actually, you can listen to that. And there's one person who talked about this selection of representative to peace agreement. It's very important. Education and training on peace negotiation and peace building process is key to successful and effective participation in peace building. Because if you're not trained on how to negotiate or how to actually approach the issues, then you'll not be able to negotiate in good faith. Women need to avoid factors that divide them. We should not dwell on divisions that happen between us, and also actually emphasize what unites them. That's very important. It is important also to build bridges between women in leadership position and those in rural areas and low-income members of the community. It's very important, because if you go and you're just sitting up in your office and you don't connect to the people, then people will say, okay, that woman actually doesn't care about us. So you have to be humble in your relationship between the people in your village or in the neighborhood that you live in. So those bridges are very important, because it will help women in leadership actually to gain knowledge about what is actually affecting women in those areas. And also to our sisters in the Revitalized National Legislative Assembly in South Sudan, they have the power actually to change things. So they can use that position as members of parliament, as the Speaker of the House, to speak up on behalf of women, and also to take action against some of the things that are affecting women negatively. It's very important. Yes, the political position is very important, but also it's not beneficial if you're just in that political position and the people whom you are representing actually are just struggling in the bushes of South Sudan. We have to think about that. So people have to use where they are actually to influence what's going on in the lives of ordinary people. And the other thing which is linked to our the challenges that faces women is actually overcoming the different locations that women are in. We are located differently. Some of them are educated, others are not, others have positions, some belong to different ethnicities. So we need to overcome those social differences. And that's done by transcending this and rethink the way in which we organize and mobilize. We can't mobilize just along our ethnic group or along our class or social. We have to organize along differences. or across differences, so that we'll be able to focus on issues that are affecting women in South Sudan. And that's what I can just conclude with, that working together is the best way, although we have different ways of addressing the issues. But if we have one target that we want to achieve, then all these different ways can actually go into achieving that target, and women will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jane, for explaining the situation, and the recommendations are really, really great. I wanted to say, before we come to an end of this interesting discussion, I would like to thank the United States Agency for International Development for sponsoring this discussion, and our great panelists for taking their time to participate in this conversation. My big thanks to everyone out there for tuning in for this discussion today. I would like to thank our team members working behind the scenes. Thank you for doing that, and continue working hard for us to at least make our voices heard. We have also now just come to an end of our show, and I would like to say good morning and good evening and good night to all of you wherever you are, and thank you for tuning in, and may God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.